What's up, Gator baseball fans? Welcome to Gator Diamond Pod. I'm Adrian Perez. Obviously, you can find me at Gator Diamond Pod. And with me today is Neil Shulman from In All Kinds of Weather. Neil, how you doing, man?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good. Getting cold here, but that's, I guess, different from what the rest of the country's experiencing. So I'm sure it'll warm up soon, and hopefully the Gator baseball team can recover some of that heat that they had earlier in the season.
Well, it is hot, and it's getting hot in Gainesville too. Not just the weather; it's getting hot on the diamond too. So we're going to talk about that. But it's a lot of stuff going on right now. We got the High Point Series loss to talk about. We got the SEC opening weekend to talk about. So we have a bunch of things going on. So that's why I had Neil come on. And also, we're going to break this up into two shows this week and see how that goes, right? It's good for all those analytics and all that stuff, but we don't want to do like a 2-hour show either. So we're going to break up this show into the midweek recap. We're going to go ahead and do the recap of High Point, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the FSU preview, and we're going to touch upon some of the issues with the Gators right now and why maybe this weekend happened. And then the next episode, which you're going to get Wednesday morning, is going to be a recap of Florida State as well as a preview of the SEC opener in South Carolina. So, Neil, you got anything that you want to add there about the show and about our sponsors real quick?
Yeah, gotta shout out our sponsor, All Kinds of Weather Forecast and Gator Diamond Pod, both sponsored by 401k Generation, the wealth management company that helps you invest today for your future tomorrow. Their team of advisors is committed to providing guidance and education for your 401k plan and its participants. They also offer a range of enrollment solutions tailored to meet the unique needs of your company's 401k plan, whether it's savings for your child's college, investment advice, or even just your retirement. 401k Generation's team of advisors makes getting to know you their top priority. Their advisors will tailor a path to assist you in navigating life's financial milestones and reaching your financial goals. 401k Generation, building stronger futures, one generation at a time. For more information, contact them at 866-998-5879 and visit their website at 401kgeneration.com. All right, Adrian, excited to be on with you. Talk Gator baseball. I mean, you and I have collabed obviously on All Kinds of Weather forecasts with Gator basketball and football for some time now, and you and I have done some instant recap shows from Conundrum Ballpark. So we've got some familiarity with each other, but we've got a very, very unique situation to talk about right now with this Gator baseball team, and let's just get into it from a chronological standpoint. Week starts off well enough, starting off by beating FAU 4-0. Carson Bowen hits what turns out to be the game-winning RBI 4 batters into the game. Brendan Lawson with a solo bomb, his second time up, turned out to be more than enough for Florida. The win in that game, remind me who won that? Who got the win there? I don't see it.
I want to say Walls, the opener. Walls got it.
Walls. Yeah, that's right. I remember he did not go 5 innings, and that's a thing now in baseball, where you don't have to go 5 innings anymore as a starter, and you can still get the win. Now, the Gator baseball box score doesn't show it now for some reason. Okay, well, that's cool. But anyway, next, what do you have to add about that game, Adrian? Because I know that one was maybe not quite as much from an offensive fireworks standpoint as we were maybe hoping for, but nonetheless got the win.
Yeah, the FAU game on Tuesday, right? The storyline there was basically the arm spinner shutout. And, Lawson keeps flexing, right? The arms, first shutout of the season, if I'm not mistaken. Walls went 2 innings, gave up 1 hit. Then you had Sanderford come in for 2 innings. He gave up 2 hits. Sanford came in, pitched 3 innings, gave up 1 hit. Great. And then Barbary shut the door. Last 2 innings, gave up no hits, man. So Walls was on a controlled start. That's kind of new that Sully's doing this year, and it was justified. Obviously, Walls had skipped his start on Sunday because of the rain in Miami, so he got the controlled start here. Did fabulous, man. Did great. All the pitchers did great. They spun a shutout. Can't ask for nothing better. And Lawson, another home run. Lawson has 8 home runs on the season now. He had 10 all of last year, so he's on pace to shatter his 10 home runs that he had last year, man. So good win, and then they went into Wednesday, Neil.
Yeah, I literally just refreshed the page on the Gator website, and now it does say Cooper Walls. That line wasn't there a second ago. Probably just some glitches or updating some stuff. But yeah, Cooper Walls gets the win on Tuesday for the Florida Gators. Game 2 of the midweek comes up the very next day. Florida A&M comes to Gainesville. This one got a little scary. There were definitely some points in this one that you thought, this may not go great, but Florida does get the win 7-5. Caden McDonald gets the W. The save goes to Josh Reitnauer. Florida got a little bit of help from FAMU, Adrian. A little bit of help is putting it nicely to be able to finish the game with more runs than the opponent in this one.
Yeah, no doubt, man. 7-5 against FAMU is kind of a tight game. The storyline here for me obviously Sear goes down, number one, and Luke still puzzling, right? Sear went down. I believe he was stealing second base sometime in the middle innings there, and he jams his thumb. Okay, now we're going to talk about that again later on because he missed the entire weekend. So that's a storyline in this ball game because I think it impacted the weekend big time. Okay, and then also Luke is still puzzling. Luke, had another controlled start in this game, and let's face it, he had 2 innings pitched, 3 hits, 2 base on balls, gave up a couple of runs, 1 was earned, 44 pitches to get those 6 outs. So just not a great outing for Luke. Fortunately, he did come in the weekend, like I had, put on X, that I really needed to see him in the weekend already, man. Enough of these controlled starts midweeks. I understand what Sully was trying to do, but, technically supposedly he wasn't available on the weekends the first couple of weeks, but yet he was available in the weekday for a controlled start. Just kind of weird. That's why it's the Luke is still puzzling thing, But he came in on the weekend, this past weekend, and did a pretty good job. So that was one of the bright spots of the weekend. But anyways, that was FAMU. They got the win. The midweek overview, right? Besides the big injury to Sear, which is not going to be a permanent injury, thank gosh, he should be back very soon, based on what Sully said. But it kind of started a little bit of an offensive funk that this team got into, okay? And they carried that over into the weekend. You only put up 4 runs on Tuesday, and against FAMU, which is not the greatest of competitions, probably the weakest team you'll face all year probably. You only were able to put up 7, and a lot of that was helped by errors and stuff like that on behalf of FAMU. So this started a little bit of a funk, like I said, that the offense got into, and honestly, they really haven't come out of it. Okay, and we're going to talk about it now in High Point. So let's get into that, Neil.
Yeah, well, just to very quickly recap that FAMU game, just how much help that Florida got from FAMU. This was how the 7th inning went with 2 outs. So starts with a fly out from Sear, and then Lawson grounds out. So there's 2 outs. Then you walk Surowitz, then you walk Bowen, then you walk Strayer, then you hit Stanford with a pitch. Then you have a throwing error that gets 2 more runs across because bases are loaded with those 3 free passes, and then throwing error scores 2 more. So that's how much help Florida got. And frankly, I'm not sure they win the game without it because they don't score a run again in the 8th or the 9th. They're scoreless the last 2 innings, and that all happens with 2 outs. So if you think if they don't issue the free passes or they just make the throw at first, at least you get out of the inning tied at 5. You're not down 2 runs. So Florida very lucky that they escaped that one. But yes, High Point. Maybe that Florida A&M game was foreshadowing something, Adrian, because come the weekend and it's not getting a whole lot better for Florida. The Gators actually do lead the first game 1-0 for a minute, but things quickly go south in that one. Liam Peterson gets the no decision in that one, but he also did have some control issues that I'm sure you can talk about in more detail. The official loss in this one going to Barbary, who came in relief of Peterson as he was pulled in the 5th inning. Florida losing this one 7-2, and there's not really a whole lot to be praising in this game aside from a solo bomb from Lawson. So, Adrian, this wasn't good, but what were your main takeaways?
You mentioned Liam there, and Liam got the no decision, but when he left the ball game and his line was concluded, he was actually in line for the loss, which when we go over his performance, it's pretty amazing because he had a great performance, right? But we're going to talk about that. But the storylines here for this game, Number one, a Florida native shoves, all right? And it wasn't our Florida native. It was High Point's Florida native. And number two, let's face it, Liam left a little meat on the bone. Okay, and we're gonna talk about what that means, man. But first, let's talk about that Florida native that shoved. Unfortunately, he shoved it down the Gators' throat. His name, Wade Walton. If you watched last week's episode, he was obviously one of the guys that I highlighted. He's a bona fide MLB prospect. Okay, and you saw some of it there. He went 7 innings, gave up 6 hits, 2 runs, 1 base on ball, 4 strikeouts, 107 pitches. Okay, for those 7 innings. And basically, he just kept Florida off balance the entire ball game. Wasn't, lighting up the radar gun. Probably about, he was 91, 92, but he was spotting that fastball perfectly in and out. He had a really, really good changeup with a lot of depth, and he just kept Florida off balance. And he never really gave you anything either. He had just a 1 base on ball, so you can never get anything going. He didn't hit any batters. And he pretty much just dominated Florida's lineup on Friday. And then what made it worse is that he's a local kid, right? He's from Lithia, Florida. I had to look it up. Wasn't sure where that was. It's just east of Tampa. So, he's a sophomore. So, I kind of joked about it on the Xbox, right? But, hey, that's how the portal works nowadays. So, maybe, he might want to, have a look around campus before he left town. So that might not be a bad idea for next year.
You're advocating for tampering, huh?
Yeah. The kid's got a whale of talent, man. So, if you ain't, trying, you ain't trying. I'll leave out the C word, right?
Yeah.
But anyways, let's go to Liam's night. Liam, 5 innings pitched, 1 hit, 2 runs, 11 strikeouts, 4 base on balls, and 94 pitches to get that done. When that game started, the first few innings, man, heck, the first 5 innings that Liam pretty much pitched, the High Point hitters had no shot. None. They were taking such awful at-bats, taking such awful swings. They looked like they weren't even going to score maybe a handful of runs the entire series, maybe get shut out once or twice. That's how they looked those first 5 innings. But yet Liam struggled with the high pitch count, right? He went deep into counts, okay? He walked 4 batters. Credit to High Point. They did it throughout the entire series. They fouled off some pitches, okay? More so Saturday and Sunday, though. In those 5 innings against Liam, I mean, they were just waving. When Liam would throw his slider, they were just waving, That's the type, as soon as you saw that, if you're Liam, I'm pretty sure that the coaches told him that. Just attack these guys, man. Period. Just go at them. Boom, boom, boom. Especially late in the batting order. Just go at these guys. That's the type of ball game. With the stuff Liam had, with the lineup he was going against, and the way they were looking, he should have been able to give you 7 to 8 innings. Okay, that's the type of ball game that, yeah, it's a pitcher's duel. You go ahead and you win that ball game 1-0, 2-1. That's how that ball game should have ended. Okay, so that's why. And I sent out the text that I've never been. I forgot the exact wording of it, but not the text. The post on X.
The tweet. The tweet.
Yeah. I've never been so disappointed in such a great performance before. Something to that effect, right? Because it just left you wanting a little more. That performance from Liam. And then he leaves, like I said, he still leaves the ball game with on the hook for the loss, which is mind-boggling, but that was the case. So that was the Liam. The game was decided in the 7th inning, the decisive 7th inning. You could say it was bad luck, no doubt, but sometimes you set that up yourself, man. Sometimes you set yourself up for bad luck, especially in baseball. In baseball, man, the baseball gods are unforgiving. If you do things right, the baseball gods will reward you. If you do things the wrong way, try and cut corners and stuff like that, the baseball gods will get you, man. And that's probably what happened in the 7th inning, right? 7th inning, and I talked about this on X, the decision that Sully made to take Ernesto out. Ernesto had given you 1 inning. And at the seventh inning, the left-hander uh, led off the seventh, and Ernesto got him out, and that completed pretty much one inning of work for him. So Sully went and takes him out. In hindsight, obviously, if you played the results, oh man, why didn't he leave Ernesto in there? Well, a couple things. First of all, if he left Ernesto in there, he was already at 14 pitches. If he had left him for about 15, 20 more pitches, he would have been burned for the rest of the series, number one, because Ernesto just 2 days earlier against FAMU had gone like 20 pitches. So he takes him out, preserving him for the rest of the weekend. And it's not like he was bringing in, somebody from the back end of the bullpen. He was bringing in Barbary, okay, to go ahead and take over with nobody on base in a tie ball game. Well, Barbary goes and walks the first hitter he faces, okay, and that's the capital sin right there, right? So then what happens after that? He strikes out the next hitter, but now is when the bad luck kicks in. He gives up a dribbler to third base. Ethan makes a great play. The call is out at first base, but they review it. The High Point manager asked for the review, and they reversed it. Okay, so the Gators were yay close to getting out of that inning. Next batter hits a blooper. Another batter hits another blooper. And before you know it, those are 3 runs on the board, and that's ball game. Okay, but it's the free pass to the first batter that Barbary faced coming out of the bullpen that got the whole thing in motion. Gators were never to respond to anybody that High Point brought out of the bullpen. Again, the offense starting its little downward slide of struggle that started on Tuesday. And the Gators took the loss on Friday. And now we'll go to game 2 on Saturday, Neil.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the baseball gods being unforgiving if you do the wrong things. And this is something like you cannot possibly in real life get upset with Liam Peterson for this. It's just a silly thing. But Adrian, you're the baseball guy here. What happens when you step on the foul line? What's the rumor? What's the myth about that?
As far as in baseball, it's supposed to be bad luck, right?
Yeah. Well, he did that as he came out of the game. So, yeah. So that was, like I said, it's a dumb superstition, but the baseball gods do not need a reason to mess with you. And if you give them one, they're going to mess with you twice as hard. So, like you mentioned, the dribbler to third base, like the irony there, if the bat makes better contact with it, if it's closer to the barrel, it's probably an out because the ball is hit harder and there's less room for service to have to run to get it. So just a combination of things there that just doesn't go Florida's way that you can't really blame on people. But Gators do take the loss. The one thing I guess you could say about Florida too is there were some defensive plays, and we'll talk about this more in detail too later. But you want to talk about being punished for doing the wrong things. Well, there were some defensive issues, despite the fact that Florida did not get slapped with any errors on the scoreboard officially. But again, you do the wrong things enough times, it's going to catch up with you. But again, more on that later. All right, game 2. Gators, again, only score 2 runs against High Point on Saturday. That sets up a situation where they have to get an absolute shove from Aiden King, and they don't get it. King actually takes the loss in this game. I don't think that he really did anything wrong until the 3rd inning, but I mean, at that point, it got ugly quick. 5 runs were put up in that 3rd inning. Did not seem like Florida had much to say about that, and they wound up losing 6-2. Adrian, your takeaways from the series clinching defeat?
Yeah, 6-2. So again, like you said, 2nd straight game where they just get 2 runs, man. So that's 4 on Tuesday, 7 against FAMU on Wednesday, a lot of them gifted, and then 2-2 on Friday and Saturday against High Point. All right, so you can see a little bit of an issue there. Storyline here in game 2. Defense starts to crack. That's number 1. Number 2, offense continues to sputter. And we already talked about that a little bit. So defense starts to crack. First of all, Aiden King. One of the quirkiest lines that I've ever seen, man. Aiden King, 3 innings pitched, 7 hits, 5 runs, none earned. 0 earned runs, 1 base on ball, 5 Ks, 91 pitches. So remember, I was a little bit anxious to see Aiden King come out for this ball game, right? Because of what happened in Miami. He was taken out, the whole cramps in the forearm thing. So I was anxious, right, to see Aiden King. Fortunately, he got the start. Didn't look like the Aiden King that we're used to seeing, okay? His control wasn't quite there. The command with his fastball wasn't quite there. And he did struggle a little bit on that, but it wasn't all his fault either, man. Aiden King still has a perfect ERA, 0.00. He still has not given up an earned run this season, okay? So that's pretty wild. 4 starts in, and he's got a loss and a couple of no decisions. 91 pitches in 3 innings. Well, some of it is on him, but, there was that big error in the 3rd inning that opened up the floodgates. Brendan Lawson at shortstop didn't complete the play, threw it away, made that big inning, opened up the floodgates. They got the 5 runs, So baseball's a team sport, okay? Baseball's a team sport because once you get that error that takes place, you still had an opportunity to shut it down, and we couldn't shut it down. So the pitching wasn't able to respond. I talked about the defense pretty much all year. Before the season started, first couple of episodes of the season, we're going to talk about it. We're going to have a segment here on it in a little bit. But one of the things that I always say is I think this season Florida's going to have to play around their defense, man. Okay, there's no 2 ways about it. There's, Ozzie Smith, Omar Vizquel, Roberto Alomar. I'm going old school, right? But name your defensive infielders, all-stars of all time. They're not sitting on the bench, guys, all right?
Derek Jeter for my generation.
Derek Jeter. So no one's coming in, okay? No one's going to be plugged in, and all of a sudden you're going to have a bunch of gold glovers out there. That ain't happening. Florida's got to play around their defense. Either you're going to have to pitch around it. So when an error is made, the pitcher's going to have to pick everybody up and get the next guy out or limit the damage. Either that's going to have to happen or you're going to have to hit your way around it. Well, Florida kind of did poorly of both. And hence you almost walked away getting swept. Okay, but you definitely lost 2 out of 3. Okay, offense continues to sputter. We already mentioned that. Offense got 6 hits. They scattered 6 hits in this ball game. The high point pitcher, Ty Brackbill, I highlighted him last week also. He actually had just about as good a game as the Walton kid. 6.2 innings pitched, 4 hits, 2 runs, 4 Ks, 2 base on balls. Offense never responded to either Brackbill or to the reliever that came in afterwards. Pretty much, didn't put up much of a fight. And 2 runs, that's what that will tell you. And they took the loss, and they lost the series. Game 1 and game 2, you touched upon it a little bit, had a lot of plays that were not handled by the defense, okay? Don't necessarily show up in the box score as an error, but they give outs to the other team nonetheless. They increase the pitch counts on your pitcher nonetheless. They increase the likelihood of a rally by the opposing team nonetheless. And a lot of that happens in game 1 and 2. And Sully went as far as mentioned it in his postgame. And, Florida leaves Saturday night with a series loss before Sunday even gets here to High Point University. So we go to Sunday, man.
Yeah, I mean, even some of the outs that Florida made, when you have a pop-up, like there are rules, there's orders of operation to go by. You don't, you can't have someone run 50 feet to try to make a catch that should be handled by the guy who has to run 5 feet. Like there, again, you have to listen to your teammates. You have to communicate and make sure that the person who most naturally and most logically should make the play is the one making the play. And again, didn't result in any errors, but resulted in some near calamities, which again, if you don't get those fixed, they could become potentially disastrous. I mean, literally the Arkansas Razorbacks do not have a national championship because of exactly that. So if it's not fixed, it can become a lot more problematic down the road. But now we get to game 3. The irony of this game, Adrian, is Florida only committed 1 error, at least in the official standpoint, in the first 2 games. And they got slapped with 4 in this game. And yet this is the game that they won. They win the game 12-11. This is, I think, their their biggest Houdini Act win yet of the year. They probably did not deserve it. They're down 11-6 late in the game. You think, well, this is over. We're not going to come back from this one. To their credit, the Gators are at least still willing to let another team self-destruct on you. I mean, I know you talked last week about High Point's bullpen not being fantastic, but still, you have a game where you're down late, you've already lost a series, you're staring a sweep straight in the face, especially with young hitters like a Colton Schwartz, who end up getting the game-winning walk-off RBI walk. Younger guys particularly could get their their hopes up. They could get a little anxious. They could go, you know what? This weekend sucks. I want to be the hero now and at least make myself feel good. I want to put a barrel on a ball. And when the pitches aren't there in my wheelhouse to do it, I'm going to try to just hit them anyway. Well, they didn't do that. The Gators were willing to let High Point just issue free pass after free pass in the ninth, and they somehow survived this game 12-11 to at least salvage this one game. We could talk a little bit historical perspective on this later, but nonetheless, the Gators limit the damage. You talked about that a minute ago with pitchers trying to pick up their fielders and limiting the damage in that inning. The Gators limited the damage of this weekend, I think, by getting at least one.
Yeah. It's kind of like last week with Miami. We were saying, right, Miami, a 2-game sweep was better than a 3-game sweep. And for Florida this week, a 2-1 series loss was a lot better than a 3-0 sweep. That's no doubt. In this game, the storyline is very simple, man. High Point finally decided to return to hospitality, number one. And number two, defense hit rock bottom, right? And you talked about that a little bit there. But let's go first. You could have also had an alternate storyline, by the way, which was the 6 home runs by the Gators offense, right? Lawson had 2, Bowen had 1, Stripling had 1, Nato had 1, and Kyle Jones had 1. So they had 6 home runs, man. The wind was finally blowing out. The first 2 games, the wind was blowing in. So in this game, the wind finally was blowing out, and you could tell, but no doubt the Gators hit some bombs there. High Point decided to return that favor, right? That hospitality that we had been giving them, being such hospitable hosts. That 9th inning was a disaster. The sad part is that it took us until basically the last couple of innings of the last game to get to High Point's main weakness, which was their bullpen. That was their soft underbelly. Talked about it last week. I had the shortstop's parent, the shortstop's father, really great guy. I met him on Friday. That real pesky leadoff hitter shortstop, man. Great player. Type of guy you love to have on your team. He was in the middle of everything that they had going on offense, and he played outstanding defense. He told me on Friday, our bullpen is awful. We need all 3 starters to go 7 innings. He told me that on Friday. Happened on Friday, happened on Saturday. WW. Didn't happen on Sunday, they got an L. So he was right on the money, man. Gilbert, if you watch it, nice talking to you, buddy. So yeah, 5 walks in the 9th inning by the High Point pitchers. 3 of them with the bases loaded to give you the walk-off walk, the rare walk-off walk, right? You don't see that too much. So, thank God for that. Okay, thank God for that. And the Gators were able to salvage that last game. And then lastly, the defense finally had their meltdown, right? You saw it coming, okay? They gave you plenty of warning. So you knew that this game was on the horizon. Hopefully, they got it out of their system on Sunday. Because like I said, now you got Florida State on Tuesday, and that's it. That's it. SEC starts on Friday. Okay, so hopefully what has been coming, boom, they just had like the crash out. Okay, because those 4 errors, easily you could have added a couple more. Okay, it was bad. It was bad. You also had pass balls. You had the plays that we were talking about, plays just not made. And for the second game in a row, unfortunately, Brendan has an error, which opens up a big inning. Okay, but he is hardly the only issue on defense. All right, he is hardly the only issue. It's kind of like an offensive line, right? Where like one guy breaks down, and then everybody always looks at the guy who got beat for the sack, but it's usually the entire line, okay? Calling out, blocks and keys and all that stuff that messes up for that one guy. So this is hardly just a Brendan issue, but it is an issue. So we're going to talk about that here shortly. But Neil, but for the overview of the High Point series, man. Listen, High Point played out of their mind. Okay, they played out of their mind. I'm curious to see how they do the rest of this year. I don't think they could keep up the type of ball that they played this weekend. I I mean, on defense, they made every single play, okay, and not easy plays, man. So they played out of their mind. Number one. Number two, the Gators played pretty bad baseball. Okay, pretty bad baseball. I mean, if you listen to Sully in these post games interviews, man, he was not a happy camper, man, not a happy camper. I think the Sear injury was huge that he sustained on Wednesday. The good news is that post game Sully did say that Blake is possibly back for Tuesday, but he sounded like it was definitely going to be back for South Carolina, and that Cade Curlin is eyeing South Carolina as a return. So that's less kind of certain with Cade, but Florida's in desperate need of both of those bats in these lineups. Okay, right now, Florida's lineup, Neil, is a little susceptible to left-handed pitching. Okay, a couple of things. You get a lefty in there, you kind of somewhat, lefty on lefty, try and neutralize Brendan Lawson, Florida's best player, best hitter. Okay, you also can neutralize maybe a little bit of Landon Stripling, but more importantly, you're definitely neutralizing Cash. Okay, Cash, different hitter against a lefty than he is a righty. That's obvious. The splits are going to show that, and SEC teams are going to scout that. Okay, so right now, unless we're able to counteract that with some right-handed bats in the middle of that lineup, i.e. Blake Sear and Cade Curlin specifically, teams are going to unload every left-hander they have on us right now, okay? I think that's coming, number one. And you're going to start seeing it on Tuesday. I'm pretty sure, and we're going to go over FSU preview, but I'm pretty sure Florida State will probably start a lefty, and then the first guy out of the bullpen will probably be another lefty. Okay, so that's number one. Also, getting Sear and Cade back in there would allow you also probably to slide Cash down a little bit. I was a little hesitant, when Cash was put up there in the 4th, 5th slot. I was a little hesitant. He's still a freshman, okay? I like to let freshmen cook a little bit, keep them down in the order. Don't put too much pressure on them. Baseball players, just like anybody else, man, you start seeing yourself in a big spot there, hitting cleanup, hitting fifth, you start muscling up a little bit, getting a little bit full, and that's just enough to probably, get you in a little slump, get you away from what you were doing good. And you can see his numbers starting to tick down now in the last week to 2 weeks. So it could allow you to put Cash down in the order a little bit, have him relax and hit the reset button, man, because you need Cash. Also, we need to get AJ Malzone back. Okay, he's been injured, has a wrist injury. Sully does believe that he will be back soon, hopefully. AJ Malzone, what AJ Malzone does is that he gives you that third catcher. Right now, the reason why Bowen has been playing first, and Sully had talked about this yesterday in the post game. The reason why Bowen is playing first is because he wants Bowen's bat in there, but he cannot, and he wants Stanford's bat in there. Okay, also. So he wants both of those bats in there. Why? Well, first of all, both are pretty good hitters, but Stanford and Bowen are both right-handed hitters. So he's trying to find some right-handed bats in there. Okay? But what happens is that he has to have Bowen in the field. He cannot DH one of them and catch the other. Because if something happens to the one who's starting at catcher and gets injured, now you lose your DH. Okay? Because now the other guy has to go behind the plate and you lose your DH. If you have Malzone as your third catcher in that situation, then he just comes off the bench and replaces the catcher who got injured. Okay? So that's why Bowen is at first base. And we saw that even though Bowen might have played a lot of first base last year at TCU, that doesn't mean he's a good defensive first baseman, guys. Okay? Just got to be honest. And you just got to watch a little bit. And I was surprised when they put him at first base because he took no reps, Neil, at first base during preseason and during fall. None that I saw. Maybe when practice wasn't open, I don't know. But I did hear that during the season now is when he started taking more reps in between the games now. I guess when the idea came about putting him at first base, Malzone was still not in yet. And, that's probably how that went. But, it's tough. It's tough because he doesn't have the height there at first base. I don't think he's got the range. He doesn't have the experience. And people think that you could just put any ham and egg at first base. And it's a disrespect to all good defensive first basemen, man, because you need to have some experience because on more than one play, he went beyond his range to field a ground ball when the second baseman, Nadu, was right there to field the ground ball and just a simple put out. Okay? And he made it very difficult by going beyond his range. Now he's got to make a throw, and we saw what happened on one of those, man. And that's just experience. That's all. That's just being an experienced first baseman, man. So that's the overview of the series, Neil. 2-3, you lost the series, and Gators had to regroup, man.
Yeah, I mean, we like to keep things positive. I mean, you and I both, as a separate entity, even before Gator Diamond Pod came on to the All Kinds of Weather brand, we liked to at least touch on some positives, even when things were going terribly wrong in any sport. And I think we should, again, shout out that the Gators, in the face of a terrible showing throughout the weekend, were willing and able to lay off some of the pitches that they may have really wanted to swing at. They didn't. They took the walks and they let the runs force themselves in. But yeah, I mean, as for Bowen, that we got to do something about this defensive situation, because Sully has clearly been tinkering with these ideas in his head for a while. Now, I'm not in Gainesville. You are. You see things with your own eyes. But I do have some conversations with some people. And Sully really started thinking about putting Bowen at first base from the people I talked to. Sounded like after the second weekend series of the year. So after Kennesaw was when he really started to mess with that idea in his head. We saw it, or we were going to see it on the Sunday game against the Miami Hurricanes before that got rained out. So that would have been his first chance. I'm not really going to believe that one game would have been all the experience that Bowen needed to gain at first base before he could look like a natural there. But it was something that Sully was thinking about for a while. So he'd been practicing at first for a couple weeks now. A couple weeks isn't enough to know instinctively when to go to first base to cover for the putout or when to go chase the ground ball so you can field it yourself. You just have to play enough baseball at that position to really get a feel for it. There's no rule like if it's 5 feet away or it's 10 feet away. You just kind of have to feel it. Depends on where your alignment is. It depends on how fast the runner is. It's all kinds of things. And he just has to get reps, like you said. So I'm not really worried there. The defense as a whole now is very worrisome. And we can point the finger at one guy if we want, as a fan base, we can do that. But Brendan Lawson is kind of the low-hanging fruit. We're going to talk about that in a second because there is a conundrum here. There is a situation that Sully's got to manage here with what to do with Brendan Lawson. But the whole defensive situation is not helping things. And it's at a point now where you think, all right, we need answers. Like the time for tinkering and experimenting is coming to a close because now SEC play starts. That's really where you're gauged on. Now, losing the series to High Point's not great, but your SEC record, again, the conference that has the best baseball in the country, your record in there is going to tell a lot of people what you are. That's going to determine NCAA tournament seeding, whether you host or not, all those postseason roads that you could potentially go down for a chance to Omaha. That is what is looked at most heavily. So we need to find some answers pretty quick. Now, Brendan Lawson, obviously there's a cost-benefit analysis here. The bat is spectacular. Like you said earlier in the show, he's on pace to shatter last year's total of 10 homers, already got 8 this year, hit one in the last game he played. So bat is still hot. That's great. He's still producing offensively. The defense, or he hit 2. Yeah, right. I meant he hit one in the last at bat in the 9th inning. before the walkathon started. He hit one there. The defense is a concern. I don't know where Florida's going to put him. I'm sure you're going to talk about the pros and cons of different spots in a second, but he's been tried in multiple spots in this infield, and there have been some issues, Adrian. So you can't bench him. The bat's too good, but we got to figure something out where he doesn't, at the very least, he doesn't hurt the team defensively and continues to produce with his bat.
You know, the Brendan Lawson situation there, and like he gets highlighted because he's your best player. He's your best player. He's your best hitter. He is rumored, not rumored is not the right word, but he's talked about as being a potential 1-1 next year's draft. That's first round, first pick. Okay. So when you talk about Brendan Lawson, Sully has to think about all these things now. And it's probably going to be a little bit of an uncomfortable conversation here. So just want to have you forewarned about that. But let's talk about that real quick. When I list the negatives, right, because a lot of people have started like a kind of drum beat to make a change there at shortstop. Obviously move Brendan, move him to third, move him to first. Give Sam Miller the opportunity at shortstop, who was the shortstop at Columbia or Princeton, one of those.
Yale.
Well, one of the smart schools.
Yale.
But let's talk about that real quick. Lawson. I listed all the negatives of moving Lawson right now, and I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, almost 7 negatives. And in positives, I have 2 question marks. That's what I have here. Okay. So negatives, history of the Yips, number 1. Okay. You were there with me, actually. You drove down last year for the Vandy series. And he was third base last year. And if Brendan's listening to this, turn off and go do something else. Because when you have the yips, the last thing you want to do is think about it. Okay? But like I said, this is going to be an uncomfortable conversation, and we're going to talk about it, right? But this doesn't mean that he should hear it. But in that game against Vandy, man, I don't know if people don't remember, if people forgot, but he had to be removed from third base and put back at first because he drops a fly ball. Then he had a grounder. He like just a little two hopper. He mishandles. He basically just got the yips really bad, and it's tough to see. It's really hard to see a player go through that, especially a talented player, right? But it happens in the major leagues. That's why the term of the yips even exists. Okay. Seen it many times. Steve Sachs, Chuck Knobloch. Mets had a catcher, Mackey Sasser, who was a left-handed hitting catcher with power, but he had to retire because he couldn't throw the ball back to the pitcher. He couldn't throw it back to the pitcher after the pitch, okay? He would tap his glove like 4 or 5 times and then throw a lollipop, even with men on base. So a man on first base, as soon as he started tapping his glove, would just steal. And he couldn't not stop tapping his glove. It was in his head. By the time he throws the lollipop to the pitcher, the base was stolen. He had to retire. So it happens, man. So you have a player with a history of that now, that's happened to, right? I've talked with scouts. I've asked about what happens to Brendan's profile if in the middle of the season he gets moved out of position. They're like, if it's the third, okay, it's on the left side of the infield. He's still a left-handed bat. If it's the first, it changes his profile. Okay, it changes his player profile. All right, he knows this. His representatives know this. All right. Then, by the way, he is your best player. He is your best hitter on the team. Like I said, so the optics of all of this is never good. Okay. Then this is probably, to me, the biggest factor. What does this do mentally to him at the plate? All right. Right now, he's your best hitter, having one heck of a season at the plate. Do you really want to mess with that? Do you really want to change his position right now when he is tearing it up at the plate, putting up some monster numbers? You really want to do that? You really want to put him at first base? You really want to put him at third base? Give him a shot to his confidence and have that carry over to the plate? And now you have a slumping Brendan Lawson? You really want to open up that Pandora's box? Man, I got to really think about doing that. Next year, Neil, you think he's still on the team? Or you think he's playing at some other school that's going to give him an opportunity to be a shortstop like he wants to be and thinks he should be?
We got to see how the rest of the year plays out for
Don't
that.
even answer that question because I'll tell you right now, he won't be here next year. All right? He will transfer. Okay? So you could do that. And then next year, he'll be playing somewhere else. Shortstop. That's just the way it is. Hitting bombs and being a potential 1-1 at school X, fill in the blank. I ain't going to beat around the bush. I told you it's going to be an uncomfortable conversation. You're not ready to have it, Neil. You wanted to beat around the bush. Not me, my man. All right?
You think I'm the one that wants to beat around the bush?
Here's another one. Is the replacement worth all this?
Yeah.
Do you have a Justin LeBron on the bench ready to go? Do you have a stud Gold Glover shortstop on the bench ready to go? I haven't seen one in fall nor spring. Okay? I mean, I don't want to dump on the kid, but Sam Miller had all of fall and all of preseason to win that slot, and he didn't win it. He didn't win it at the plate. And I'll be honest with you, Neil. His glove might be a little bit better than Brendan Lawson's, but it ain't all that much better, man. Okay? It ain't all that much better to risk all of these other things that I just talked about.
And he doesn't have the bat that Brendan Lawson has. There's no comparison there.
So when I go to positives, I have the 2 question marks. And then I finally wrote something. Hoping for better play at shortstop. That's what I finally put as a positive. And you know what to say about hope, Neil? Hope ain't a plan. So now, if you're Sully, you don't think Sully knows all this, man? You don't think Sully knows all this? I don't envy the position he's in, man. All right? Listen, for a change to be made at shortstop, it ain't happening anytime soon. It's going to happen sometime in the middle of the SEC season, and it's going to have to get so much worse that, man, you don't even want to see it. Okay? You don't even want to see it. So that's how I see that. I think if you get a first baseman, that helps. You also have an issue at center field, man. You also have an issue at center field. Okay? I've heard words like, a little laziness out there. I've heard a little loafing out there. Those are all terms that people use. Okay? When they don't see a player busting it on every single play, on every single ball. Okay? At the Miami series, remember that I mentioned the one run that was scored that was somewhat okay was the sac fly by Cuvée to center field. Shallow ball. All right? I think Kyle Jones just thought that the guy wasn't going to run on him. But he did. And he scored. Why? Because Kyle Jones was pretty slow with it. He was pretty slow with it. All right? That could be a mental thing. But they start to build a little bit. Couple of balls here in the High Point series that he just didn't break fast enough, man. Yeah, he misread him, but then it didn't look like he busted it up to try and get to that ball, man. Man, Florida has had some unbelievable center fielders, man. You could run them, man. You could run them. Matt Dendecker, way back in my time, Brian Duva. I'm talking about the 90s. That's way before your time, Brian Duva. All right, Dendecker, name them, man. But Judd Fabian, man.
Michael Robertson was a great defensive center fielder. Saved us against TCU.
Yeah, so we know what good center field defensive play looks like, man. All right, we know what that looks like. Okay, there's a little, like Liam on Friday. There's a little bone. There's a little meat left on that bone. Okay. There's a little meat left on that bone. So it's not all just Brandon, man. It's not all just Brandon right here. Okay? So anyways, that's the defensive rundown. In my opinion, Neil, you asked some questions. Answers need to be... Listen, I think it is what it is. I've been seeing the defense play like this since fall. It just is what it is, man. You have a collection of guys that defense is not probably their number one forte, and a lot of times it becomes contagious too, man. A lot of times, like in a lot of things in sports, the ball just starts rolling, man. The ball just starts rolling on you. and you see one guy make an error, and then everybody starts tightening up, and then you could be a good defensive player. But now you're like, oh man, if that ball comes to me, man, I gotta make the play this time. I gotta make it because so and so had an error, and now you get tight, and it just kind of you almost don't want to think about it.
Yeah.
If you're a player, you almost don't want to think about it because it's almost like kind of like free throw shooting in basketball. But that's where we're at. Hopefully, they could play around them. They could either pitch around it or they could hit around it. But I think it's going to be an issue throughout the season. Why? Because I've seen it since fall.
And maybe the answer to the question that I posed is you don't fix it and you just overcome it. You survive it by either pitching to really soft contact so that the plays in the defense are really routine, or you just get a lot more strikeouts, which you can't change being a soft contact pitcher to being a strikeout pitcher, but you can just try to limit the amounts of barrels, I guess, or you can just out hit it. You can make your pitchers be that much more pinpoint precise, or you can just be that much more pinpoint precise with your bats barreling up baseballs and just overcoming that stuff. So, and this is why, because the drums on Twitter have already been beaten, and Twitter is not real life, but there were a lot of people talking about it's time to have a conversation about Sully. All right, well, what are you going to do? What answer do you have? Sully goes and he gets a big time bat. Brendan Lawson was a very highly rated recruit coming out of high school. Now he wasn't like the number one overall prospect in the class, I don't think, but he was up there. So Sully goes and he wins that recruiting battle. The NIL budget is, at least in his case, there for him to go win the battle, wins the battle. So you get him. Everyone else wanted him. Sully gets him. But now we see the defensive issues popping up for him. As you say, he gets the yips now because I'm sure it's compounding. I'm sure it's building in his mind. So, all right, if you're, and I'm going to ask this in good faith too. So y'all listening in good faith to this can drop your thoughts in the comments too. But what do you do if you're Sully? What's the answer? How much more defensive yipping, for lack of a better word, how many more defensive mistakes are you willing to put up with Brendan Lawson before you say, okay, that's it. The defense has gotten so bad that now I am willing to move him either somewhere else in the infield or just have him DH. Where's your threshold for that? Because DHing him isn't really an answer, but in theory it could be. So if he makes 5 errors a game, say, there's got to be some line. But like you said, Adrian, I don't think we're anywhere near it. I think it has to reach a point of complete catastrophe, and I don't think it's quite there, but it is concerning. So that's the position Sully's in. We're talking about this now on the show. Sully, you better believe, is thinking about this every day now. So if you think it's time to have a conversation about Sully, all right, well, what do you think he should do here? Because Adrian and I could both poke about 5 holes, if not more, into any potential solution that you have. So Sully's got his work cut out for him, but I really don't think there's anything more he could do here other than just keep experimenting. And I think, as you said, Adrian, even before the show, we were talking about this. I think that Sully does kind of have to hope. Like you said, hope's not a plan, but at this point, we've tried Brendan Lawson at different places and we've seen different issues pop up, or the same issue, I should say, pop up at different spots. So I don't know what Sully's supposed to do here.
Yeah, it's funny because, and before we go to the FSU preview, a couple last things on this. Before the season started, my projected lineup had Lawson at shortstop, right? And most of the national people, if you listen to national shows and even local guys, all had penciled in Sam Miller. At shortstop. But all you had to do was just go to some practices and see that Brendan Lawson took all the reps at short, and that Sam Miller split between short and third, and Brendan Lawson took all the number 1 reps. So you knew what was going to happen. Number 2, if Brendan Lawson had signed pro, he had gotten drafted by the Cardinals in the late rounds, I think the 19th round, 19th, 20th round, he would have been a high draft pick, top 5 rounds if he had made it known to them that he wanted to sign, right? But he had made it pretty much known that going to college was going to probably be his thing. So he was drafted late. But if he had signed pro right out of high school, they would have made him a third baseman within, rookie ball. Okay, he would have been switched over to the third and made a third baseman. He goes to college because he wants to be a shortstop. And in today's world, where the transfer portal exists, these are things coaches have to deal with now. Okay, before this, you probably didn't have to deal with it that much, but now you do. So now you do. So now it's a situation that head coaches have to deal with. This is not unique to Sully. Sully's not going to be the only coach that has to deal with this type of situation. So yeah. So in my opinion, I knew breaking preseason camp what the starting lineup was going to be there on that left side of the infield. And I see that's how it's going to be moving forward, man, anytime soon. But let's go ahead and
Yeah,
FSU, man.
let's talk FSU. Gators actually lost the series to FSU 2 years ago for the first time, I believe, since 2013, I think. So they've dominated FSU over the last decade or so. The midweek series that we do here, one Tuesday in Gainesville, one Tuesday Jacksonville, one Tuesday in Tallahassee. First game coming up is in Gainesville. Adrian, you mentioned Brendan Lawson having a hot start. And the one thing that I forgot to say at the time, but now I think is a good time to bring back up, is to be completely fair, a lot of those opponents were of a lower caliber. High Point, Kennesaw, FAU, FAMU, UAB. And how much is that worth? Well, now we're going to see the real competition step up. Starts with FSU this Tuesday, tomorrow night, or today, if you listen to this on Tuesday morning. So Gators' first real test other than Miami coming up this year, and it comes after they have a lot of wounds to lick from the High Point series. So what are you expecting in this game, Adrian, and what do you make of FSU? What kind of challenge do you think they present?
Well, FSU's 13-2. Their two losses have come against arguably the two best teams that they've played. Auburn, they took a loss to Auburn and a loss to Nebraska at the tournament there, the Globe Life tournament there in Texas. But as usual, this is the midweek that we play FSU in. By the way, how do you feel about that? I've never gotten your input on that. How do you feel about playing FSU in the midweek thing? Do you like that?
So quick story. Before Gator Diamond Pod came on and all kinds of others, this is before your time, we actually had Jack Caglione on our show, and we asked him about this point blank because we said, Sully likes it. FSU hates it. Gator fans are mixed. FSU fans hate it. What do you think? And he goes, I think it would be a cool idea. I think it would be a cool idea to get to pitch against them because remember, he was a pitcher also. I would have liked to gotten to pitch against them. And I like the idea of best on best because obviously weekend series go Friday is your best guy, Saturday is your second best guy, Sunday is your third best guy. Midweek games, you're either going with the opener strategy where you have like limited pitch counts, you just do bullpen days, or your fourth best pitcher. Now we've had that in the past. Like we had a staff with Logan Shore and AJ Puck and Alex Faedo. So Dane Dunning had to be the midweek guy, and he was a fantastic pitcher. He's now on, I think, Team South Korea for the World Baseball Classic. He's had a decent MLB career, if not an outright great one. So in those situations, it can work out great for you. But for a lot of college baseball teams, it's really hard to find four really, really good pitchers. And you don't see a lot of other sports where the most important position is down to its fourth string guy on both sides. Like the Florida FSU football game in 23 is probably the closest we've ever come to that because like we have Max Brown at quarterback for Florida and FSU's got Tate Rodemaker. So everyone else is starting. All the starters, all the first string guys are out there except for the most important position, which is quarterback. So imagine now from Max Brown and Tate Rodemaker in football going down to your fourth string quarterback on your roster. So he said that, and I'm like, oh God, I get it. Yeah. Oh, I'd be mad if I were a pitcher and grew up a huge Gator fan and I never got to pitch against FSU. So that kind of changed my perspective a little bit.
I hate it. Me and Chris would talk about it every year when the first Florida State game came on, and I hate it. I absolutely despise it. I don't know why Sully would like it, but I hate it. Listen, as far as the possible starter, first of all, it's hard enough to predict sometimes who's going to start for the Gators. Like if you're going to ask me who's going to start for the Gators tomorrow, I don't think it's going to be McNeely with a controlled start, right? Because he pitched on Sunday. So I don't think it's going to be McNeely. By the way, Ricky Reef is dealing with an injury. He wasn't available this past weekend. So Ricky Reef, I believe Sully said he hopes to be back soon. I don't think he gave an exact week that he was coming back though. So gotta keep an eye on that one. He said his shoulder was barking on him a little bit. So keep an eye on that Ricky Reef. So I don't know. I think Barlow gets the start tomorrow against Florida State, and then it'll be the whole bullpen, right? So I mean, not for Florida State, for Florida, and then for Florida State, like I said, it's hard enough to predict our guy, much less Florida State's guy, right? But for Florida State, I think it's gonna be one of two guys. I think it's gonna be either Peyton Manka, a sophomore left-hander, he's 2-1 with a 4.76 ERA, or Cooper Whited. He's a junior left-hander. He's 1-0 with a 3.38 ERA. I think you're going to see both of these guys. They've pitched a lot during the midweeks. So left-handed pitchers. I know Florida State's already, scouted Florida. So Florida State is coming off a weekend sweep of Northern Kentucky, and on Saturday and Sunday they run ruled them. So the rest of their bullpen is going to be probably fresh. That's 4 innings right there that they didn't have to cover. So Link Jarrett's going to have an entire bullpen ready to go, and I think these two lefties are going to be definitely in the forefront tomorrow. As far as hitters, listen, it all begins and ends with the big guy that they have in that lineup, Miles Bailey. Guy's a stud. He's a true sophomore. I believe he's sophomore eligible, so that's good. Get him out, But he's their first baseman, big left-handed hitter, big-time power. He's hitting 391. He leads them in that. He's slugging at an 826 clip. He's got 6 home runs, 17 RBIs. He leads them in home runs also. The RBI leader's coming up now, but Miles Bailey, big left-handed hitter. You got to just be careful with him, man. He's got light tower power, kind of like how Jack has. Next hitter that I'll spotlight is Noah Sheffield. And if that name sounds familiar, yeah, it's Gary Sheffield's son. And he has a stance just like Gary Sheffield. He waves the bat and all that. So I can't wait to see that. Gary Sheffield was one of my favorite players, man. Real big Gary Sheffield fan. He should be in the Hall of Fame. You should be in the Hall of Fame, Gary. BS, man. But anyways, Noah Sheffield is a sophomore right-handed hitter. DH outfield. That's what they have him playing. He's hitting 352. He's got a couple homers, but he leads them with 22 RBIs, man. So he's an RBI machine right there. Because if he's got 5 more RBIs than Miles, and he sees him up there, man. His eyes get big. He knocks them in, man. So keep an eye on Bailey. Keep an eye on Sheffield. They got a typical Florida State lineup. I mean, Link Jarrett's done a good job there since he's been there. This is finally the first coach that has given Sully competition, man. I mean, Sully was feasting on the Martin family, man. Let's face it, he was feasting on them. Link Jarrett has changed the FSU program right now, and they're back to being one of, the top programs in the nation. So it should be a good one. You really got to hope Florida comes out ready to roll on this. You want to see them put up some offense, man. That's what I want to see. I want to see him put some hits, get some offense going, have some good at-bats. They've been literally in a 5-game funk offensively. They need to get off that schneid because SEC ball's coming, man. If you ask me for a prediction, at home, I got the Gators winning 9-7. That'll be my prediction. 9-7 Florida.
So it sounds like you think both teams are going to go deep into their bullpen.
Yeah, it's typical midweek, man. It's typical midweek.
Well, yeah, which is typical. I'm still – because I grew up with 2005 Gator baseball was the first team I really fell in love with. That team had a pretty good staff. And then the teams, like my high school years. Again, I talk about Dane Dunning being a midweek starter. Like that was my first real – serious, like locked into every game, because that's when they first started putting all of them on ESPN 360, it was called back then. So I got to watch a lot more games as opposed to just checking the score the next day. That was my first real impression of Gator baseball, where they just had loaded pitching staffs. And now, especially in the NIL era, where you can't do that anymore. But just, I guess, a regression to the mean, like Sully making trips to Omaha 4 years in a row and then 3 years in a row again right after that is just not easily replicable. So you just have to kind of learn that teams are human and they're not always going to be superhuman teams like we had. That 2015 team especially was loaded, even though it didn't win. But yeah, like we're back down among the mere mortals now. Like we have flaws, we have weaknesses. We talked about the defensive issues. The pitching staff is not as deep as it once was under Sully. That's not his fault. It's just the game changing around him. But yeah, we have to learn that Gator baseball just has to win with its strengths and by masking its weaknesses. So yeah, and to my earlier point too, Florida has not officially lost a series of an entire season to FSU since 2013. They did lose the regular season series to FSU in 15, but then came back to pound them twice in the super regionals. So technically, Florida won that season series because they played 5 times. Florida won 3. So that's how long it was before 2024 since FSU won a series against Florida.
Yeah, and we'll just wrap it up here now. But listen, buckle up, man, because if you look at the first 3-4 weeks in college baseball,
Brutal.
and the SEC in particular, it's going to be a wild season, man. I mean, people thought LSU was a super team. Go check out their weekend, how that went, okay, and how the midweeks have gone. LSU, Arkansas split a 4-game series with Stetson.
Yeah.
Okay. By the way, we stuffed the Hatters in the midweek 2 weeks ago. Okay, in 2 games. So it's going to be a while. The only team who seems to be kind of like a super team, so we'll see, is Texas. They're still undefeated. But that's really the only team. And guess what? We don't play them this year. Okay? They're not on our schedule. All right? So even if they are a super team, ain't our problem. All right? But as far as the rest, I think it's going to be a wide open SEC. It's going to be wild. Starts next Friday. I'm looking forward to it. You got anything else before we sign off, Neil?
Yeah, I mean, another thing to point out, too, is not only do we not play Texas, I think the next best team in the SEC might be Mississippi State, and we also avoid them.
Yeah.
So we maybe get some breaks finally with the SEC schedule for the first time ever. Yeah, last thing to note really quickly, as I think in the last 10, 15, 20 years, the gap, especially with NIL, the gap between the Floridas and the Texases and those smaller schools like a Stetson, like a Jacksonville, like a High Point, that gap has shrunk a bit. So you may hear those names and think, midweek opponent, whatever, lower level opponent, we should beat them. The gap between those big schools and those smaller schools is not that big anymore. So it's just part of the game. It's just part of the game, and you got to just win as many games as you can and just take each opponent seriously. That's the reality now. Stetson, North Florida, or LSU, whatever, they're all capable of beating you, especially with a game as crazy as baseball that we are so thrilled to be able to present to you guys on Gator Diamond Pod. Adrian, it's your show, so I'll let you wrap up from here. But always fun talking about Gator baseball with you, and glad we could do it on a pod for once.
Yeah, no doubt, man. Yeah, so for Neil, we're going to be signing off now. Make sure you all get on them socials, get on that YouTube, hit that smash button, hit the like, hit the follow, go on Apple, go on Spotify, do all that good stuff, leave comments and the 5 stars and all that good stuff. This episode will be coming out first thing tomorrow morning, which is Tuesday, the day of the Florida State game. And then we're going to also shoot a preview of the South Carolina and Florida State recap. And that'll be out there for you guys on Wednesday morning. Okay, guys? So until then, we'll see you at the park, man. Take care.